Hello, thank you very much for joining us today on this very special webinar. Most of you are hopefully aware that Lexis AI is coming to the UK market very, very soon. Actually, in a matter of days and weeks, we can count it on not many hands at all. And one of the questions we keep on getting from our customers across UK legal is, but what is it actually like to use the tool? And there's no better way to answer that question than to ask some people who have access to the tool and have been using it. Lexis AI has been live in the United States for just about 6 months now, and I'm delighted to be joined by two users from the Beckage Firm in the United States who have been using Lexis AI for a little while and are going to talk to us about it. Lexis AI in the US is broadly identical to the tool that we're going to be bringing here in the UK, apart from, of course, it has fewer Zs in words, it spells color correctly, and it's entirely based on UK law rather than US law. But those core functionality of conversational search, the ability to talk with an AI engine and as if you're talking to a colleague to get a legal response, the summarization of cases, the ability to draft and create first draft documents, and also the ability to upload and analyze your documents are essentially exactly the same, grounded on UK law rather than US law. So that's enough of me talking. Let me introduce you to our two panelists here today. We've got Scott Lupiani, who's a partner at the Beckage Firm. Scott, believe it or not, started his career in the US Army as an airborne infantryman and an officer, where he forged a career jumping out of airplanes. Now, when hurtling through the air started to get boring, Scott decided that he would try jumping out of airplanes while simultaneously studying at law school. So when he claims in his marketing to be a no-nonsense attorney who can effortlessly deal with high-pressure situations, you better believe it. Scott started his career working at a large New York firm, dealing with the sort of complex litigations that would make Harvey Specter, our hero from Suits, very jealous. He's then held a couple of general counsel roles in medical device and equipment businesses before bringing his compliance and regulatory expertise to the Beckage Firm. So thank you very much, Scott. And we're also then joined by Kevin Johnson, who is the Chief Information Security Officer and Senior Vice President Cyber Risk, also at the Beckage Firm. And security runs through Kevin's blood. His life also started out in the armed forces with the US Air Force as a security forces patrolman running an intrusion detection system for high-level protection resources. Now, whilst that sounds almost identical to a Tom Clancy novel, in fact, he took on incredible responsibilities for technology and communication security in the Air Force, before then going on to go and get his feet wet with the US Navy as a systems analyst. So after years of public service, Kevin brought his talents to the private sector. And now in his role as CISO, Kevin has brought sort of national security level talent to the Beckage Firm. He specializes in vulnerability management, security governance, and risk management. And I already feel a little bit safer knowing he's on this call with us. And to be honest, if any of you haven't changed your passwords recently, despite having received nagging reminders from your IT teams to do so, you better do so, because Kevin will find you and he will track you down and he will change them. So thank you very much, gentlemen. It's lovely to have you here. Perhaps let's just set the scene. Scott, tell us a little bit about the Beckage Firm and perhaps a little bit about your firm's overall approach to technology.
Thanks for the introduction, Matthew. Yeah, the Beckage Firm is a tech-forward law firm. We consider ourselves a technology firm that happens to practice law, I think is probably the best way we can say it. I've known Jen for a better part of 20 years. She's been my friend for quite a long time, and she really, was is a pioneer and leader, a thought leader in the data privacy, data security space. It's a pretty niche area here in the U.S., as I'm sure it is over in the U.K. And because it's such a niche area, we tend to employ a lot of technologists. We tend to employ attorneys that specialize, or at least understand technology. And then obviously, those attorneys seek to leverage their non-legal skill set into the legal realm of data privacy, data security, incident responses. We handle HIPAA, high net worth individuals. I head up the litigation group, and we defend entities and individuals against claims relating to data. Sometimes just regular commercial litigation, really depends on what the situation is. But we tend to be, as I said, really technology focused. We've moved into AI and understanding that. We handle in the U.S. what's called the Americans with Disabilities Act cases. We've had some extremely high profile cases that have made the national scene. Maybe there's another one or two on the way. And yeah, so that's our law firm.
Thank you very much. So let's just sort of take this step by step. So would you have said that the lawyers in your firm were tech savvy? What sort of legal tech were you using across your organization before AI came along?
Kevin, you want to answer that?
Sure. So a lot of the tools that we used were kind of your traditional tools, and we being a more tech-centric law firm, we built some internal tools out as well that we utilize that are proprietary. But generally, it's a mix of various things, right? To assist with research, to assist with drafting various documents, essentially accelerating product creation, just a number of different things. Given our status kind of in the marketplace, we are vendor and tool agnostic generally. And so we're fluid as things come out. And so we kind of go through various use cases of different things, unless we settle on something that happens to fill the need. So there's quite a few that we utilize just for different purposes. But a lot of them are traditional, right? Non AI or automated.
Yeah. So when ChatGPT launched, what was your firm's stance on using the AI tool? Was it something you embraced and you encouraged, or did you immediately put in rules to prevent people from using it? What were those initial views on AI?
Oh boy.
Both at the same time. I mean, and I'm sure Scott can echo this as well, but we're being tech-centric, we don't necessarily shy away from utilizing new technology. We're just very cautious about using new technology. So when it first came out, from my standpoint, from the CISO standpoint, I didn't want anyone in it. I didn't want anyone putting anything in it. I wanted to make sure that I understood what that data was being used for, and how to essentially use it in a safe manner for various use cases within the firm. So it took a little while for me to get comfortable with exactly what it was doing. And then at that point, I went through an entire process of telling folks that they can use it, and probably to everyone's annoyance a little bit, constantly saying, don't put anything sensitive, don't put anything proprietary, don't do this, don't rely on the responses. So it was a really interesting standpoint from us, we want to adopt new and emerging technology, but we want to be careful with the way that we use it.
Let me add a couple things. I think initially, we looked at it from the perspective of who's going to use this. Do we allow others to use it in the firm? And, Kevin and I had a lot of discussions. I'm not the most technical savvy individual there is, especially in this firm, but I could recognize that there were parts, features to it, quirks, whatever you want to call it, deficiencies that could expose our clients' information. I am also the general counsel of the law firm. I'm in charge of professional responsibility and ethics. And, obviously, being careful with the sharing of information to a platform where you're not really sure where that information is going or being maintained or retained, it was really quite scary, in the sense of, we have obligations as attorneys, and, and over here, we evaluate those by state, but, I can't think of any state that doesn't have, confidentiality and privilege, disciplinary rules in place. And, you just don't want to expose your client's information like that. So that was one of the things. So, in the sense of, how are we going to deploy it to the firm? We really needed to understand what our limitations should be. And, that kind of fell on Kevin quite a bit. And again, having conversations with me about it, we got to the point where, we weren't really sure that we wanted to use that type of open type platform for, and not to mention, obviously, the legal consequences with getting it wrong. I don't know if you guys have heard this in the UK, but there was an attorney in, I think, Connecticut, maybe, might have been New York, somewhere in the Northeast over here, where they used ChatGPT to draft a brief, and AI made up some cases. Now, the attorney did get disciplined pretty significantly. So that's a pretty well-known case here. That didn't happen all that long ago. And so we wanted to avoid a lot of that kind of stuff, a lot of those consequences.
So I think what you've outlined there will be resonating very much with the audience. So I think a lot of that mindset is where we currently are. So now let's talk about why you did consider buying a legal AI tool. What was the journey you took there? Did you find, was the demand coming from the leadership of the firm? Was the demand coming from the attorneys, American word, lawyers in the firm, to drive that particular change? What was it that made you consider researching and investigating a legal AI tool?
I think efficiency. At the end of the day, we're seeking to employ technologies that make our attorneys. And I agree with you. I don't really like the word lawyer. I try to avoid it as much as possible. It just sounds so cheap. But we try to employ technologies that help our attorneys be efficient, correct, effective. And also, with Lexis and looking at Lexis, we were kind of in this weird scenario where we were growing the firm at such a rate. And I know this doesn't sort of answer the question of the technology, but we kind of came into this at a time when Lexis was in the US here, was rolling out their AI platform, and we needed a bunch more licenses. So there was a really good opportunity for us to acquire more licenses, reduce our overall expense, and then employ a new technology that we really wanted to anyways, or at least wanted to start the process of understanding, how effective and how wonderful it could be. So that's kind of the answer. I do recognize, and Kevin can speak to some other AI platforms, but there are other ones out there that are sort of coming online. There's some upgrades to some of the platforms, but again, the closed system of Lexis made it attractive, at least from a confidentiality and privilege standpoint as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree completely with Scott. That was, for me, that was one of the greatest benefits of moving to, or at least utilizing, a legal AI tool, right? And kind of talked about a little bit earlier how you couldn't rely completely on ChatGPT's responses, and you shouldn't fully rely on any AI's responses. But the thing with ChatGPT and other open source AI tools are the simple fact that that data is essentially an aggregate of a ton of different data from a ton of different sources that hasn't been massaged or cleaned up or for the specific purpose that you're used for. It's kind of, the jack of all trades kind of deal. And so for us, when Scott told me about the fact that Lexis was launching their AI tool, I thought that was really interesting because of the fact that the data sets are very cleaned up and specific to law, right? So you have a little more confidence in the responses that you're getting. And again, the tool is designed for our use case. So that was very important for us.
Thank you. Incidentally, if you have questions, please feel free to post them in the chat there. Someone has already done so with a comment saying that indeed we've had a similar situation where someone has used ChatGPT to create a brief that was put into an HMRC case. So we have similar precedents here. So let's now talk much more depth about Lexis Plus AI, and let's talk about what were the concerns and reservations. I guess, Kevin, let me look at you first. What were those concerns and reservations that you had about buying Lexis Plus AI, and how did you come to overcome those concerns?
Sure. So everything. Now, I'm a CISO. Scott will tell you I'm very, very security first, probably to a lot of the firm's annoyance at times. I like to make sure things are squared away. I've got a lot of confidence in the security of the products before we ever even contemplate using it. So a lot of my reservations originally were wrapped around the fact that I didn't know how the security of the product worked. I didn't know how your data sets worked. The responses, what happens when you type something in? Does that get deleted? Is an ongoing storage of all of your chats and prompts and responses? So all of that was concerning, but it was relatively short-lived, right? So that's my initial response when looking into a product. And so following those concerns, I reached out to the Lexis team and asked for security documentation. I had some questions regarding the exact things I just said regarding encryption, data retention, those types of things, and really where the data comes from. And Lexis was fantastic about providing that information to me. There was no hesitancy. There was nothing along the lines of, well, we don't really have that. Let us try to get you an answer though, kind of deal. So what that meant to me is that Lexis spent a lot of time to make sure that the security of the product was first and foremost, which you can see simply by the fact that when you upload a document or something like that, it's encrypted and then deleted right after the fact. So that was really important to me, to be able to see that the data that you put in is protected, B, that the retention of that data is short-lived, just long enough for you to accomplish the goal that you're trying to, and then C, that the security documentation was comprehensive. So and that's a lot of the behind the scenes information. So all of that was really important to me when evaluating Lexis Plus to even see, Lexis Plus AI to even see if it would be something that we would want to test out and use.
And Scott, from your perspective, did you have some concerns or reservations, or were the rose-tinted glasses firmly on your nose?
If I'm being 100% honest, I didn't have a ton of reservations, and I'll tell you why. One, I trust Kevin implicitly. Like, if he says to jump, I'll ask him how high. It might annoy me sometimes, but that's all right. So from a security standpoint, we know we have the right guy in place, to protect the firm. So that wasn't necessarily on my mind. I was probably more excited about using the technology, mostly because, look, I needed this technology anyways, right? I mean, I needed, the firm needs Lexis. We need a research platform. Obviously there are competitors in the U.S., and I assume there's probably a couple of those that have made the way over to UK. If I don't really know that, but I assume. So it's the question becomes, look, if I can get the technology for at or better than the cost, and I was getting this technology, if I can get the technology plus AI at or around the cost that I was getting it for without AI, well, then this is a great opportunity to supplement our resources for our attorneys and our staff. So it was more of an excitement to add an additional platform to what we were already, using for our clients and our legal work.
Right, let's get into some of the juicy bits now. Okay, so how do you currently use Lexis plus AI? Can you give us a couple of examples? Maybe across some of those core use cases. Just show us how you've used it. What have you done? What has it achieved for you?
Well, I think on a day-to-day basis, I've never been all that great with and all that efficient with the traditional searching and search terms, through a research platform like Lexis, or any of the other ones for that matter that I've tried over my career. My brain doesn't quite work that way. So I often struggled with trying to get to the particular legal issue or the case law, or even the statutory references that I needed to get to. So on a day-to-day basis with Lexis's AI platform, I just ask a question. I can formulate questions. And as I get older and a little more gray, they become easier. But I found that in my day-to-day practice, I think one of our our senior vice president of technology, he was talking to this client, and they asked a very nuanced question about the 21st Century Cures Act. I ain't going to bore you with it, but suffice it to say, he says the client really needs to know this answer and needs to know it quickly. I went, well, how quickly? 10 minutes. Okay, what's the question? And so the question came in. I manipulated it in my brain, put it into Lexis AI. I had their answer within 2 minutes after that. That might have taken me 4 hours to go through the 21st Century Cures Act and then look at the individual jurisdictions that the question pertained to with respect to what is the time limit that a medical provider would have to give a patient their test results, and can they delay or do that online, something like that. That would have been hours of research that I was able to directly drill down into and then verify through the statutes and the sections and clauses of the statutes that I could go to and read it to make sure that Lexis AI had it correctly, and it did. So that's a day-to-day version.
And let's just talk about some of that validation, right? Because there are the concerns of hallucinations in AI tools, and we're never going to completely get away with that, or at least not in the short to medium term. It's about minimizing and mitigating the risk of it. So, what can you tell us about how you have confidence in the answer that you're getting?
Well, you mentioned rose-colored glasses, earlier, and so I don't want it to seem as though it's always that easy and that quick, because there are other times when I have done some research and asked what I thought was a very specific question. Apparently AI didn't, and and I and it was about a particular state's uniform commercial code rules, and I got an answer that it seemed very promising, and so after reading some of the case law, I'm like, well, Lexis AI just didn't get this right. They didn't get it completely wrong, right? But they didn't get it. It didn't get it right. And so, but the beauty of it is that it provided enough of a starting point, a jump off point, that I could find the right answer within the cases that were cited. We promised we weren't going to talk about shepherdizing, but looking at the case they cited, I was able to navigate through, the spider's web of cases to get to really what the root of, the answer was, to my question. So, at the end of the day, there's happy accidents, when you research. And if you don't open your mind to these happy accidents, you often leave a little frustrated. You've got to remember that, information, good or bad, is still information, and it can lead you to where you want to go. And I think the takeaway for me with that whole process at that time was, one, ask a better question that the computer likes, and two, obviously don't trust the answer, verify it. And three, it can be that point that leads you, down the yellow brick road to exactly what you're looking for.
So, Kevin, are you getting heart palpitations listening to Scott there, or what's your view as the CISO about the risk that what Scott's just talked us through presents to you and the firm?
Sure. So again, most of that risk comes along the lines of, in that particular use case, getting back incorrect information, right? And then that's gonna result in possibly reputational damage. It could just result in a number of different things if those things are not double checked, essentially. But the thing when it comes to hallucinations is Lexis gives you the references. So if you are doing research or you want to ask a question or whatever the case is, and you get an answer back, you can look at the references as part of that and determine whether or not it was an appropriate response. And then again, going back to one of my original statements, you should never fully trust any of the responses that any AI platform gives you, regardless of which one it is. You can have some confidence in the accuracy of the responses, but you should never trust it, not completely. And so for us, as we started using it and as Scott and I spent some time utilizing the tool and determining capabilities and accuracy and what it can and cannot do, everyone that uses it and anyone that uses it for any particular part of their job, whether it's research or drafting or whatever the case is, it needs to be reviewed by a professional, whichever part you're going to use. So if it's research and you're going to reference case law or whatever that is, then that professional, that attorney, really should be reviewing that respective piece of case law as a result. The tool is used as an efficiency tool. From what Scott said earlier, it can get you there a lot quicker. Sometimes it can get you there almost instantaneously with the question you ask. Sometimes it takes a little more finagling. You may have to tweak your question or whatever the case is. But for me, as long as the firm, which they do, because I never close my mouth about it, double check the responses that come through, and there's somebody that is verifying it. That significantly helps to reduce the risk regarding the outputs of that. And so we have strong controls and strong policies internally to help enforce that mentality within the firm.
Yeah, and there's a leadership aspect to this too, right? We have attorneys that range in experience from a few years. We have some up and coming individuals who have just recently taken the bar exam, or are about to take the bar exam, and we're going to bring them on and mentor them and teach them. And then we have some, as Jen likes to say, seasoned attorneys. Some of us with salt and pepper on our faces. And so, but the leadership has to remind everybody, it doesn't matter what your position in the firm is. It's a consistent discussion on verification. Make sure it's right. Every single time something leaves our firm to a client, to a court, to a regulator, it has to be correct.
Yeah. So Do you have any other examples, perhaps, of some of the other features, like such as drafting or summarization or
Yeah.
the upload to review?
Yeah, so I just, even this morning, I was working on a response to a motion to dismiss that one of our other attorneys had started, and she's a wonderful drafter and she's a wonderful writer, but I thought, it's a good time. Let's throw it in. Let's see what it does. And a couple things to say, a couple points to make quickly. To Kevin's point earlier about the non-retention of information, I didn't realize this until this morning when I uploaded the motion, the response to the motion. I think I was working on it for an hour and then it dropped it. It said you've exceeded the time limit and it deleted it. If you want to work on this some more, re-upload, which I thought was really, it just sort of verified the consistent approach to not maintaining information like that. Now, is there anything, essentially confidential or privileged in that? No, it's going to be a publicly facing document. It was close to being done anyways. No big concern, however, but that's just that document. If I'm uploading something else to review, it's nice to really have that confidence. But one of the things that it did do when it analyzed the brief, and it's such a powerful tool, it compared it with hundreds, if not thousands, of other similarly situated responses to a motion to dismiss, and provided passages from other attorneys, work product that happened to be in the Lexis database. And then it also, suggested other cases that supported the cases we had already cited. So, again, that saves you hours of time. And then you can go to the cases and read them, make sure they apply, et cetera, et cetera. But, again, hours of time, you get a much better work product for your clients. Your success rate is going to go up. Clients are going to be happier. You're going to get paid more, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah.
Well, and let's focus in on this time saving, right? So saving time, I know you answer this, which is why I'm asking it to you particularly, right? What impact is it going to have on your billable hour, right? If that client work now takes you 2 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, as opposed to half a day, what is the impact on the billable hour, and how do you deal with that, and how do you maintain the profitability of your firm in a world where you can do that work far, far faster?
Oh, there's a lot of layers to this onion. I guess I want to look at it this way. We really pride ourselves in being a firm that cares about our people. Not that we care about our people over the clients. I don't mean to suggest that. I'm just talking in sort of an internal, firm view of professional life, and trying to balance that with personal life. We're not lacking clients. We're not lacking work, right? I mean, we're in the technology space. There's plenty of work for us. Happy clients exist when you provide them excellent work product at a reasonable price. You start to lose clients when one of those two things decreases, right? Your work product suffers, or you're overbilling them because the time it takes you, you're inefficient, right? The time it takes you to do something. So we're always conscious about efficiency. Secondarily, we also operate in the billable hour market, and we operate in a flat fee market as well. So a lot of our privacy policies, data security policies, a lot of our policy work, we bill at a flat fee. And so being efficient really increases our bottom line in that marketplace. Being efficient in the billable hour marketplace also increases our bottom line, even though it seems counterintuitive, right? If I can do something that would traditionally take and people would accept for 4 hours, but I can do it in an hour, you'd say, well, you're losing 3 hours of billable time. No, I'm not. I'm backfilling that with other client work. I'm backfilling that with happy client work who's going to give me more. And I'm also getting maybe their policy work, their data protection, data privacy work. So we don't look at it from that perspective, right? We look at it from how do we best serve the client in a way that they're not taking out loans to pay our bills. Happy client, you'll get more work. And then there's one more thing, from that firm lifestyle point of view, and I've mentioned this a lot of times, and to me it's important, and try to make the connection with me. We have, and I'm sure over in the UK it's probably similar, is we have a lot of stress as attorneys, and that stress manifests itself in many different ways. The effects of that can get to, alcoholism, drug abuse. We have high suicide rates for attorneys and doctors in the US. So much so that most bar associations, have like an employee assistance, like an attorney assistance kind of program set up that if you have these, if you're suffering from any of those things, you can go, and it's obviously free of charge, confidential. You can go and they can hook you up with a professional to help you get through that. Now, I say that not as a promotion for that, but it's always been important to me to make sure that our people don't suffer the stresses, the burnout, that this profession can do to you. And it sounds really strange, but I think AI is one of the ways that can really be accomplished, because, when you have 10 or 15 matters that are bearing down on your shoulders to get done within the next 8 to 10 hours, because everybody's demanding the work product. And if you can do it more efficiently, your stress level is going to go down, right? If you can start the process, your stress level is going to go down, so that's an important thing for me. And I talk to our people about that consistently. Don't get burnt out, use the technology to help you, do your work.
That's really interesting. So has adoption of Lexis Plus AI been constant across all of your team, or are there some people that have adopted it better than others? Have you had any pushback? Or what's that adoption been like?
Well, we've had it for, we've had it for about 6 months. I think initially there was some hesitancy, right?
For sure.
Yeah, I just the idea of, oh my God, this is something new. What do I do with this? What if I ask the wrong thing? I think we're seeing people use it more, right? Because I can see it. I can see, you can see the correlation between the time it takes somebody to do something and what kind of product they're spitting out. You can kind of understand that AI has assisted them in their practices. Would I like to see it used more? Yeah. I mean, I open it every day. I may not use it every day, but I at least open it every day and I consider it. And I think the more that it goes on, I think the more that we continue to encourage its use, and its proper use. Yeah, I do think it'll become a habit. Habits take a little while to make, take even longer to break. But yeah.
Especially for attorneys that have been doing things a certain way for a very long time.
Yeah. It is hard to get away from.
It is. I mean, you get very comfortable in a certain routine in the way that your workflow goes. And to be fair, that really does apply to almost every piece of technology regarding adoption, and especially something that sometimes can be a little bit difficult for people to wrap their heads around. But to Scott's point, I think the more that the tools are updated and continue to show more value, and B, the more that we use it internally and we have use cases to say, hey, I was able to find this really quickly, or to Scott's point earlier, we're an instant response law firm as well, and to be able to get a response that quickly is invaluable. So I think the more examples that you have of its use and its benefits, the more that people are going to want to use it. But I do think that we are consistently having folks use it more and more.
And what about training? Have you provided training to your team on how to use it? Has that made a difference? Does it need training?
So I think Scott and I, when we first got the tool, we did a little bit of training together, right? I've used AI products before Lexis AI, and spent quite a bit of time understanding how to write prompts and how to get the proper information. And so when we first got the product, Scott and I spent some time going over potentially how to, for lack of better words, write the best prompts that we could. And I think that's one of the biggest things when it comes to training, because if you don't know how to ask the questions for the answer that you want, the product's not going to work the way that you need it to. And so that's probably one of the biggest parts when it comes to training. And as Scott said earlier, he can ask questions really, really well. So when you go through that process and you do know how to ask those questions, and you can write them in a way that the platform can recognize them, then you'll get the responses. And so I think since that initial setup, Scott spent some time with the firm to really go over the use of the product. I'm sure that there's a little more, but
yeah, Kevin, the other thing too is, and this should be said, Lexis is and has been for a long, long time really accessible, right? So you have a product specialist that you can call or email, heck, even text them, and they are always available for you and to help you, process, or formulate, the kind of inquiry that'll give you the results you're looking for. It's all included, right? I mean, it really is a nice resource. It's not a nice resource. It's an excellent resource, to have.
Yeah.
And so what about your clients? So I think that it's really interesting to understand about the training you've given to your teams. And I think, the writing of the questions, right? It is a skill, and the more you do it, the better you get. But what about your clients? What have your clients' reaction been to the knowledge that you're using? Do you tell them that you're using an AI type tool to support them? And have you had to give your clients training to understand that it's not a risk, or to explain to them what it means to them?
We are open and obvious with the fact that we are a tech forward firm. We speak across the country on AI, on data privacy, data security. We are known for that. And it shouldn't come as any surprise that we employ AI. Do we, I have talked to a couple clients about the use of AI, and they've seemed receptive. I mean, they're, obviously, what I like to do is make sure that they understand that, look, the use of this is in a protected space. It's using a very defined data set. The information is not retained past the point of the session. You're safe, right? You're safe. You're as safe as we think we can get you in this information. If I'm using Lexis traditionally, right, it's the same thing. I'm entering information. It's spitting me back information. I think where clients probably would be concerned is the uploading of a brief where some of their information, is sort of there, on the network and then gone. But at the same time, and I did talk to one client about this. At the same time, look, it's as I said in the beginning, this is not any different information than I am going to post publicly when we electronically file this for the court. the entire world can see this document. I'm just checking to make sure I got the law right. I'm making sure my arguments make sense, which they generally do. And
just to add on to that slightly, I've had folks ask in certain engagements that I've been in, if any AI products were used for any of the information or anything like that. But I think the parallel that I tend to draw is I use it just as I would a search engine to find any type of information. Is just I get that information faster. Really, that's what it comes down to. I'm still the subject matter that's reviewing it. I'm still putting it into whatever format it needs to be put into. But when it comes to the use of the product, to me, it's no different than essentially using a search engine for the most part, aside from like contract analysis and stuff like that.
Matthew, let me just quickly add this, because I think it's important to say, when I do upload a brief for analysis, just like I would with the courts, we have certain requirements to redact information before we file. So I've already redacted that stuff. There's no, you have a credit card dispute, right? We're not putting the 16 digits of the credit card down. You might identify it by a couple digits to aid the court. So there has to be some diligence and some thought ahead of time before using it as a, sort of the belt and suspenders approach. But, we do that as well. So we are protecting, any information we have to the extent that we feel we can.
Yeah. Interesting. Thank you. Well, I think we're at the end of the time we allocated, but let me just ask you one final question. This video is going to be watched by people who are interested in buying Lexis Plus AI. What would be the top tips that you would give them to, about how they can maximize the value in the use of a tool like Lexis Plus AI?
Spend some time formulating your questions, track the way that you're asking them, track the responses, know how to tweak them. And again, make sure the subject matter is always reviewing any of the responses or any of the content that comes out of its use. Lexis does a fantastic job at making that cleaner than other tools that I've seen, but that still needs to take place.
Well, what a well-rehearsed answer that was, Kevin. I can
well,
see
yeah, Matthew, I wrote that for him last night.
With Lexis AI.
You thought you'd get through this presentation without a golf reference, right? But you're not going to.
Oh boy.
So, it's like the changing of a swing, right? The first few times you're trying to modify some portion of your swing, it just looks awful. And your questions are not going to be good. They're going to be awful. But the more you do it, right, it is about repetition. It's about diligence. It's about repeatability. And it's about forcing yourself to break away. You want to quit smoking? Well, guess what? Don't pick up another cigarette, right? You've got to do something different to kind of change the behavior. And with AI, I don't want to overstate it, but you have to change your behavior a little bit and use the technology in the way it was designed in the best way possible.
Quite. Well, thank you very much indeed for taking us through your journey and giving us some examples. Thank you too for sharing some of the mental health aspects, I think, of AI, something that I don't think has been talked about enough. Thank you very much to all of you, our audience. We have had a deluge of questions. I've tried to pick them out as listening to the conversation. So hopefully we've asked a vast majority of them. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Kevin, Scott, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks.